One thing I've learned, if you don't hold their feet to the fire, everybody gets burned.
Hold on. Before you start waving around that freedom of speech thing, when you're in a crowded movie theater and you scream fire, you better be able to smell smoke. You come on this radio show and you start saying incandescent things like that, you better have more behind you, pal, than just your thumb. I've been listening to talk radio for years, and one thing I just can't stand is when the host has to, push his way on the people, beat the callers into his way of thinking, extending his ego, or when the callers call in and say something so outrageous and the host lets it go unchallenged. The sign you're on the road to truth is the lack of contradiction. You want to find truth, you just don't simply believe somebody because of their authority or their degree, or you listen to what they say, you test it against reality, and you hold their feet to the fire. All right, we are back. I'm doing a pre-record today. I have some things to go over. I had some thoughts I wanted to share. I'm doing something early tomorrow, so I can't stay up too late here with this. So I'm just going to put this together and go through a few things. I think right now we're at a very dangerous point in our information age. We have more access to more information. Good thing. We have the ability to circumvent the gatekeepers and propagandists and so forth, which is a good thing. They are gaining the ability to pollute, or at least censor or pollute what we're saying. That's a bad thing. And the best thing I could think of, if I was going to try and stop information from going out on the internet, if I was going to, you can't turn it off because there's too much commerce tied up with it. So the money will keep it open. But the idea of censoring and figuring out how you could use the fascistic approach by having private companies pull the old, it's our app, it's our system, so, we can make our own rules, and too bad. That is using fascism to block things, push or stop narratives. So the good news is, with that bad news, is that it's pretty hard to turn everything off. So the goal is, what they want to do is push people off the mainstream, if we want to call it the mainstream, like Twitter and Facebook and whatnot, and then put them into a ghetto. I went into a show a while back about this, and then segregate that ghetto. And that's not done. So here we are in this point. But I did come up with some things I wanted to go over, some posts I made that, first off, I want to say that what I'm saying, while being my opinion, are things that I have accepted based on a combination of approaches, critical analysis being obvious, but also my gut, and perhaps spiritual leading on there. Now, those latter two aren't necessarily scientifically proven. I guess perhaps over time being correct might do something, but, I make no assertions that I'm sitting here containing absolute truth. In fact, I came up with a little thing earlier about if you believe you're correct That's really incorrect. I mean, remember, Socrates came up with the most reprehensible folly we have is to think we know what we don't know. Well, if you think that you're correct, I know the truth, I know the reality of it. I'm not saying you don't, but how I would phrase it, since we have limited access to all the information around whatever particular thing that you're talking about, I would say that you are in a state of rest in a relentless search for truth. So when you have found something that works, and hopefully you've ran it off other people, other perspectives, critical analysis of it, lack of contradiction, you do all this stuff, you get to that point and you're comfortable with what you found, regardless of whether what you found is comfortable. But you look at it and go, yeah, I got all these different vectors of analysis, and, my gut is going, yeah, I think that's right, and spiritually it's aligned with things, and you accept that. You're simply at a state of rest in a relentless search for the truth, because as we learn more, we have to adjust that picture, and including, at post-death, we're going to learn more things and adjust our views of the afterlife and God and whatnot, because we are limited in how we can have it. I mean, if people think that the Bible is talking about heaven having this streets of gold and jasper and all these various fancy jewels, I can't say it's not, but more probable what it is these are the best that they can come up with on their ability to describe it. And so they're coming up with like the best they can do to try and come up with explanations for something that's inexplicable, unfathomable. And what we've been doing on several of these shows is trying to fathom the unfathomable. And when we do that, you can be correct in your state of rest while in your relentless search for truth. You can have a lot of things point to it. It could resonate, which is perhaps another word of combining the gut and the spirit. And so it might be good enough for where we're at in our corporal world now, and that's fine. But always remember that as we grow throughout time, we're going to get closer and closer to that truth. But since we are not God, we may have a pipeline to God, access to information from God. We are not God. We're not all-knowing and infinite, so we're going to always have a partial view of the ultimate truths. But it will line up with it. It will resonate with it, and you can work with it. You don't have to be 100%. You just have to be in the right direction. And to further complicate this, if you are, sometimes when you find the information, you actually change your position 180 degrees. So the people around you might go, oh, wait a minute, you just did a 180. But in reality, in your search for truth, you've made another step on that straight line toward truth by adjusting the position. And a lot of times 180-degree positions are not that far from each other. I mean, for example, everybody thinks there's a black hole, and there are physicists, in particular Phil LaViolette, who actually thinks it's a white hole, that the center of the galaxies, matter is spewing out, and the arms are actually moving away from the center, and that is how the galaxies are being created as opposed to being destroyed. And there's evidence to support both positions, and they're 180 degrees. So you have to look at the search for truth as an adventure and not be worried about it. If you trust God, who has a look at your heart and say, this person is honestly looking for the truth, it doesn't matter what you are, atheist, Baptist, whatever. If you want to find truth, you will find truth, and God knows what you need and when you need it. And so the last thing on the bucket list you may realize is God. Okay? It doesn't matter on the time frame because God is there around everything. He's very secure. He's not worried about being worshipped. He wants truth, and he wants lack of contradiction. He wants no. If you look at Jesus, all his railings when he was here were against hypocrisy. That's the number one thing God doesn't want. Anyway, let me try to look at some other things here. Another thing I came up with, we're talking about various advances in technology. And one thing we need to remember that all technical advances were done and are done, are first applied to war. So whatever they come up with that can be used for healing, whatever, all these type of things, the very first approach of these things were applied to war situations. That's great, isn't it? But that is the driving force for technical advancement is power and the assertion of power, protection of what you have, seeking to get more. That is the driving force. You talk about the yin and the yang. I get them mixed up. But what you end up having is you have let's say a bloody, careless push forward, which causes all kinds of havoc and death and destruction. And then from that comes the healing and the spiritual growth from that messy step forward. And that's where I think we were talking about the spirit and the material world. In order to get the material world to move forward, sometimes it's very messy. And the cleanup operation is the actual learning process of to learn better what you just did, not to do it and to do it properly. Let's see. There's something I want to mention. People who, I don't know who listen to me who would be considered younger. I don't know what younger means anymore. There's people who are 60 who are juvenile, and there's people who are 14 who are mature. But one thing about simply being alive on this planet over time, it will teach you something that no book, no meditation, no study, even if you believe it from someone telling you, it will not be appreciated until you have lived on this planet for, decades and decades. Because what age gives you is a perspective. Now, I'm going to give you an example, a harmless example. I put up a video or a picture I shared on Facebook, which has a digitized picture of a friend of mine. We were fooling around with the computer in the early 80s, very early 80s, Commodore 64 computer. There was a digitizer program. It's actually a cartridge that you would stick in the back, and then you hook up your video camera to it. At the time, Beta and VHS, of course, were the cameras. There wasn't webcams, per se. I think they started a little bit later. But the way to do this was you plugged your composite video output of your camera into this. And when you pushed I think it was the space bar, you had to hold still for I don't know if it was 10 seconds, not 8 seconds. 8 seconds a day. I said 5, I think, in the post. But it was 8 seconds. You had to hold still while the 8-bit processor working at 1 megahertz scanned the information in a 320 by 240 grid of grayscale, and I think it was 8-bit grayscale. So, and you outgrade the picture. You look at it now, and you go "Holy cow, man! That's that's bad." Because you can take a picture with your phone, and you can have these high-res pictures that are fantastic quality in your phone, like nothing. But in order to appreciate the amount of growth and change to where you're at now is to have lived through the advent of those. There wasn't digitizing prior to that. I mean, other than scientific, $1 million machines, but on our level, when you had these video games, whatever, they were amazing, absolutely amazing, because you had things like Monopoly board game or whatever. That was your option. And now you have Pong. It's wow, right? But those items can't be appreciated unless you were there, unless you lived through it. You can explain it. People can say, yeah, I could see that. But if you've actually lived through it, and that's where age comes in. Age also allows somebody to remember back in a time when you had, when color TV was invented. In fact, I remember being 62, We had a black and white TV up until in the early 70s. Now, I've seen color. My uncle had color. But when you see these things happen, it's like amazing. Now people have with the flat screens. I have a flat screen. I think it's a 720 DPI as opposed to a 1080. I don't remember. Maybe I did. Maybe my first one was. That broke soon. That's another thing. I had TVs for 20 years. You buy one of these TVs in 2 years, it's broke. But the resolution on there is beyond amazement. And now you're talking about 4K and now 8K, which your eye can't even see. This is where discernment comes in with simply being there and realizing how advanced things really are. They're like advanced enough. And the only reason why they're advancing further is not for anything really better other than maybe bragging rights. You know, it's like having a Maserati and driving in downtown traffic. All it is bragging rights. It's not functional. So that could be it. But this is where the idea of age. So whatever age you are now, take note of you and your past and what you've been. So when things change in the future, you can appreciate it. A lot of it's bad. I mean, you could take, a lot of people aren't alive anymore, but you can talk to the people who survived through World War II in Germany and surrounding areas in the Holocaust stuff. You know, when those people were carted off to that and lived through that, they appreciated what a firsthand what an oppressive government is. It's not theoretical. It's not a storybook. We're not trying to think about it. So now you fast forward to today when a lot of those political ideologies are being kicked around again. These people are going, wait a minute. Of course, they're dying off, and a lot of them have been able to say their story, but you have to be in their shoes to really understand how ridiculous it is and how people are arguing whether or not there were 6 million Jews killed or 3 million Jews, as if 3 million, oh, well, you know, give them a pass then. You know, these are the arguments that are ridiculous when you're looking at the picture of what happened. So anyway, it's very important that where you're at and where you've been is you take note of that, because as things change, your perspective is priceless and should be shared to younger people who mostly won't care, but at some point will realize, and they could draw on that knowledge, even though they may not have really cared about it at the time. But perspective is something that you cannot teach. You have to experience that kind of perspective. Let's see. Okay, I just saw a post on Gab where it had a newspaper talking about Buttigieg killing dogs when he was younger, being arrested. Now, that's fake. And my warning in there is that people will be putting out things for whatever reason. In fact, I don't understand the reason. These people are probably one of the sickest of all. I mean, politicians, psychopaths, you can understand them. They want power. They don't care, right? But people who are out putting out fake news, I mean, real, honest fake news, just for fun, to see how many people can believe them. This has been going on since the Internet, before the Internet, when I used to call on a modem to message boards, like Surfing the Apocalypse and others. They were... it was the whole goal was see who you can come up with a story and how many people you can dupe. And to me, it's sick. It's absolutely sick. So in this paper, it's supposed to be the South Bend, but it's cut off, so you can't tell if it's the South Bend what. And I looked up the South Bend Tribune, and none of these stories existed. And then I found a website that allows you to create your own newspaper clipping, and it's all antique to make it look legitimate, but it doesn't actually show the name of the newspaper. Like it'll say like the New York, and that's it. It's got the little old font to make it look like the New York Times, and you're supposed to assume it's the New York Times, and the person just cut out this little article, or took a picture of it. It's all fake. So people are pushing it around going, I knew it. I knew he was this. I knew he was bad and all that. That's terrible. You can't believe this stuff. I don't care what it says. I don't care if you think that the story is believable and it fits your paradigm. I mean, it happens all the time with Trump. They have Trump being racist, and all the available history shows anything but. And they have to take what he says, and they have to take and trim it in pieces and reassemble it. Or in the case of Schiff, you have to do his parody to get it what they want, right? Well, when you see something that comes up on the web that is too good to be true within your paradigm, for example, arrests are going to be starting soon. I've heard that now for how many years? Now, they may. I'm not saying they won't. But that statement now is meaningless to me. What has to happen is the arrests, for example, to have meaning. That's another one I wrote down, but I'll get to that in a minute. So when you find these stories, this famous actor supporting Trump, most of the times it's not true. Like, for example, there's a famous one that went around by Kurt Cobain and John Lennon predicting a rich businessman being president. The John Lennon one was easy to debunk because it was the year after his death. It's kind of hard to say it when you're dead. But people are, in the Trump side, the people are searching out for, we want to have some famous person side with Trump. We got so many against him. We want, who cares if the famous people, these people who are actors, the thing about it is they're being paid to be someone they're not. And as more convincing they can be someone they're not, the better better they're rewarded. A lot of them could be dysfunctional because of it, because of the job. It's like somebody working in a coal mine, all right? They're going to have a dysfunction of like black lung potential because of their job. It's part of the job is to psychologically be someone else. How can you trust them anyway? And the people who are tethered to a more rational existence as actors are still, their job depends on getting hired in these things. Anyway, I kind of skipped over there. But remember that if you see something, you read it, you have to research it, and you have to watch out for what I call single point references. Because if you do a search, you may find 20, 10, 15, 5 sources for the story. But each one of those stories trace back to the same single source. You can't accept that. I don't care what it says. You can't accept that until you have corroborating evidence from other places. And the internet is a big place, and yeah, there's censorship and everything, but a lot of the stuff they just can't hold back, the cost of holding it back is too high. So the story has to be so vital for them to be able to put that kind of resources into it to mess with it. And if there was, like, for example, a video coming out of some famous politician with a child abuse, sex, or whatever, if there was an actual video coming out, that would warrant you'd see whole sections of the internet go down to try and get this stuff. But the cost of that is huge. So that whatever that corresponding item would have to be huge. And just assuming it's not out doesn't mean it exists in the first place. No, And when Wiener's laptop stuff actually is introduced in evidence, then we'll know what's on it. Other than that, it doesn't matter until legally done. And actually, I'm talking about my other one, so let me skip to it. I posted some of these things on my Facebook page. I got to remember that one. I got to come back up to that. I said it good. I wrote it down, and I said it nice, so I'd rather find the quote than simply try to re-quote it and do a worse job. Sometimes when this stuff comes to me, I write it down, and it's like it's information that has come through me, let's say. I can't prove that. It's just kind of assumption because of how it enters through me. It's from my higher self, from my soul or God or somebody. But now I can't find it. Gosh darn. I think I'm coming closer. I got a couple. Okay, yeah. All right, here we go. Going back to what I was saying, the source of information pales in importance to its relationship to reality, truth, through critical thought and analysis, not whether one likes it or whether it fits one's worldview. That is the importance about it. We are seeing disastrous results of not following this. For example, if you see a story and you go to Snopes, which has been proven and noted to be biased and support some left views on that. And they do an adequate job of bringing up references and so forth to show that the thing is either correct or not correct. You can still accept it. It doesn't matter. Snopes is not going to be wrong on everything they say. But you have to look at how they produce the information. Do they come up with links and references other than the single point type of reference that corroborate what they're saying? Can you find other stuff that they don't quote, and then you can modify it? I once used Snopes as a reference in discussion on microwaves because what they said I corroborated, and it was neat. It was like kind of a neat source to be able just to quote that link rather than go through and create a whole, recreate the post. Well, it was ridiculed. Like, oh, if you're going to believe Snopes, well then you don't know. And it's not. I don't believe or not believe anybody. I look at what is happening. What's the evidence? Where's the logic? Where any lack of contradictions? And I use my own knowledge of whatever the topic may be, little or a lot, and add to it to come up with it. And sometimes you will see that regardless of how wrong Snopes can be, they're right on this issue. And that's how we have to look at it. I'm not supporting Snopes. I'm saying that you have to look at each issue on its own. You can't just believe what someone says. Pastors, news guys, obviously politicians, historians, even scientists nowadays with the global warming stuff. You can't just believe what they say. And that's, if you go back into the idea of the trivium and all that, these fallacies, that's the fallacy of authority. Oh, this person's a doctorate in this, he should know. Now, he should know, but it doesn't mean that what he's saying is true. It means that person could be biased on their own. They might be paid to say it wrong, different, or whatever. So the thing is that if you're out there, and I've seen this, I've done it myself initially, where I've saved a link without checking it, and then when I checked it, I found out it was problematic, and I had to go delete it, or someone else pointed it out to me, and I accept that correction. But we really have to be careful now, because now is more important to pollute the internet and the information, because things can be brought out and they could be shared that could be devastating to a power system, and they want that stopped at all costs, depending on how bad it is. Like I'm saying, if you have all kinds of alarms on your car, it'll stop the average thief. But if they want to get it, they'll come in with a helicopter with grappling things and, pick it up and carry it away. But the cost would be huge for that, and the ability to get, to have them find out, where you live and find the person who did it, the trail. So, you'd have to be worth that cost. Many people aren't worth the cost, and that's why it doesn't happen like that. So, back to this, sort of information pales in importance. It doesn't matter where it comes from. Now, you might develop a relationship with a source that they've been right many times, and so you can be more comfortable or more relaxed when they say stuff. And that's fine. It's natural, but you can't always leave the guard down. There's people who have been listening to me for years. They don't agree with me and everything I say. They'll listen to what I say, and then they'll think about it. But that doesn't mean they automatically just believe it, and they shouldn't just disbelieve it. It should stand on its own. Another thing that to me is really important today is, especially in these days of Q and whatnot, is words manipulate perception, but action is the currency of reality. Ultimately, force will rule the day. Force is going to rule this day. Now, what force will it be? Looking at the political climate. It could be legal force. It could be that they have evidence and indictments and trials, and legal force will rule the day. It could mean, assassinations. It could mean political arm twisting. It could be blackmailing. Blackmail is a force. It's an intellectual, I guess it is, force. There's a political force. There's a propaganda force. But the force is going to have to be backed up. If you say something, it has to be backed up by action. So when they come up with propaganda, it's only going to manipulate perception. Or if you, to me, until people are arrested, Q is a form of propaganda, albeit perhaps, positive, like Jesus is coming or something. It may lift the heart, but it does disservice to you by not giving reality. It gives a perception. But action is the currency. So until arrests are made, indictments are done, trials begin, and results happen. I mean, people could be innocent too. I mean, I want to have a real trial and all that. But until that happens, it's not real. It is not real. Q is not real. When they do it, doesn't mean Q's real either, because somebody just saying something and then it happens doesn't mean they even had information to begin with. But people have latched onto it ideologically. It's like on the same kind of par as a religion. And they used words like trust the plan, have faith, and all this stuff. What is having faith in any of these individual prognosticators? What is having faith in them do anything? Are you saying that by having faith in Q, you're going to change the force of reality? Well, then go, well, a lot of these people believe it, so we're going to make it true? I know there's theories that say that. And I know, when they talk about like Jesus walked on water, he violated principles of physics. But if you have a particular relationship with your physical, your mental, and your spiritual, you can use spiritual physics that can overrule the mundane physics of the real world. But does that mean everyone can do it or will do it? No, it's possible. But in order to do it, you have to do it. And I remember having a discussion with somebody who was a writer for, it's one of the Godlike Productions. There was Surfing the Apocalypse, and then there was another one, and I can't think of the name of it right now. I was talking with her, and she was talking about, texting, or instant messages or whatever. And it was about the idea of being able to float, And I said, well, she says, yes, you can float. It's your mind holding you back. And I said, well, go ahead. Go ahead and float. I'll believe you. Tell me you're floating. And she says, well, I don't have enough faith in it and all that. And I didn't mean to, I wasn't making fun of her. I was saying that I'm saying it's possible for someone to float, but you have to do the spiritual physics involved of overriding the mundane physics that are here by default. And so by simply saying, I believe Q is correct, will not make it happen. I'm sorry, it won't. If a lot of people believe by marching on Washington, they could change things, and, 20 million people march on Washington and change things, it's the action of the 20 million people walking on, that's the force that is going to insert itself. Saying things doesn't matter. The whole point of Antifa, right? Antifa is saying a lot of stuff, but the force of then intimidating people to not come out and not say what they want, that's the force they're applying. And it's not doing well. In fact, what it's doing is exposing the police department being told not to do anything about it. Of course, again, media is not reporting it as much, but it still gets out through the other side and passed around. So, again, the actions. Posting a message on a board is an action. Somebody may learn from it. They may post it. They may do something. That's an action. Okay, fine. But it has to be acted upon in a force compensatory with what's needed to change. If I call up Adam Schiff and say you shouldn't do that anymore, he's not going to go, okay. I don't have the force necessary to do it. What force would happen is if he was voted out of office. But he's positioned in an area extremely democratic and very locked down. So for him to be voted out would take a lot of force. Not force beating up people. Force of going out and educating and explaining and setting up things and all that. And that's what I'm saying, is that words are meaningless. In fact, words tend to do more harm than good. It could make people acquiescent Trust in the plan. Jesus is coming. Just wait. It could make you mad and do something dumb, which is actually hurts your cause and supports their cause. That's why words are manipulations. Action is the currency of reality. Now, it doesn't mean a good action will give you good results. Your reality might be harmful because of action that was not a good idea. Which is why there's this dance between thinking about something, meditating, resource, and acting on it. There's that dance in there is a very subtle thing, which is where I think the spiritual information, motivation, or education will come in on it. That's very important. Excuse me. Looking back to my notes. The locusts, that's pretty impressive. The locusts are in unprecedented levels, billions and billions and billions in Africa. And I keep going back to Revelation, and with plagues and locusts, pestilence, which would be locusts, and also blight on the crop. You have wars, all the rumors of wars popping up. But what makes this time different, I think, is you have the world wideness of it. Not only is it the largest locust, plague ever recorded, but people in North America are hearing about it, where the Native Americans back in 2,000 years ago wouldn't have known about what was going on in Africa. So you have it combined. You have the size of it, the scope of it, the effects of it, and you have the universal knowledge of it. This is why I'm tending, I would tend to believe we're in the latter days, or at least we're in a latter day cycle, and depending upon what people do, we'll decide if it goes into the full-blown latter days. That's how I look at it. I think I've had shows on it, so I don't mean to gloss over it, but I don't want to be redundant as well. Okay. Another thing about the virus that's going out there. People are getting all upset about it. They're saying it's man-made. It's this. Let me, for the sake of the demonstration, let me concede it's man-made. It's a bioweapon. Whether it got out by accident, which would be, I think, more probable, given the first two, than China using it on themselves. It's possible that perhaps it was released by an enemy nation in the area under the cover of being near one of their biological facilities, but whatever. Let's just say all those are true. Let's say the numbers are higher than what they're saying. There's more people who have it, more people have died, etc. I did some math. And the official, at least when I did this, maybe it went up a little bit, the official death count was in the 700s at the time. And the recovery rate was like 1,700 or 1,500. It was almost 3 to 1. 3 recovered to 1 dead. It was actually a little bit less than that, but, so I did some math, and I divided into the population of the Earth, which is 7.8 billion people. And I divided that into the number of deaths, which I think I put down 712. I don't remember, 740, whatever it was. And multiplied by 100 to get the percentage. So far, 0.00009% of the world has died from this virus. Meanwhile, I don't know, virtually every other cause of death pales this cause of death in the world sense. And, this is a local event. So if you're in Wuhan, China, it's going to be more significant than, I'm sitting here near Chicago. Even though they had one case here, the case has been released and healed. I guess it was 2 cases. One got it from someone who had it, who came in there, but they got through. You're dealing with an area where it's going to be, it's going to be less sophisticated medically than other areas, whether it be Beijing or whether it be London or New York. It's going to be the overwhelming amount in the small area is going to cause people to panic and do things They're going to actually exacerbate the situation by forcing people to sneak away and get out before they're quarantined. I mean, there's videos of them being boarded up in their house, dumped rocks in front of their door so they can't open their door, which is hysterical. I guess, what about windows? But so there's a lot of local events happening which are exacerbating the situation that will not happen in L.A., Chicago, New York, whatever. Because when somebody comes from China, they're going to be looked at and watched. And when things are okay, fine. If they show signs, then they take care of them. But the death rate from people getting sick is not, like, astronomical. There's more people with regular old flu and any other regular old diseases that are dying here. So even if it is chemical warfare, biological warfare, even if it was tended to hit the U.S. and now it snuck out by accident, like The Stand, you put all these things together, it's still small. Now, somebody said, well, how do you know there's not more dead? Okay, let's say if there's 100,000 dead. Now, right now it's in the sevens, right? Let's say there's 100,000 dead. 100,000 times, over 100,000 times, 1,000 times. I'm doing my math is screwing up. But 100,000 dead, I figured it out. It would come out to be 0.00012. You lose a zero and it's 1-2. That's still astronomical percentage low. It's a local event that has some spreading to countries who aren't taking proper precautions. But it's not like the people who get it, like in The Stand. You got it 99.999% death. Now that's impressive, okay? And, of course, it's fiction. But what is the danger from this is the reaction to it. More harm can come by the reaction to this disease and how people act about it than the disease itself. Proof in recent history, the swine flu. They came up, they're all worried about the swine flu. Oh, my God. They came up with a vaccine. They had to stop giving it because more people got the swine flu from the vaccine than without it. So they end up quietly it kind of just stopped. I lived through it. I remember nobody I knew had it. They stopped giving the vaccine, and it was kind of like one of these, okay, let's not talk about it anymore. And they, it died out. We were able to hit it head on, and okay, sure. So if they come out with a vaccine for this disease, which the odds of you getting it sitting in wherever you're at are ridiculous. They're going to come out with a vaccine on there, which can actually harm you. It could give you the disease, first off, or based on some of the other problems with vaccines, preservatives and toxins and whatnot, the harm is of having it. Now, what if they quarantine people and make you stay in and make you have the disease, cart you away into other areas? This has all been done. This is being done in China as we speak. It's all been done. The reaction to the disease is more devastating than the disease. It's almost all the time. Go back to bubonic plague. The problem was antibiotics. Now we have antibiotics. Bubonic plague doesn't break out. It happens if the conditions are right and could be immediately decimated. So this is not a worrying event. I'm worried about the reaction to it. World Health Organization muscling their way into America or the West and coming up with these vaccines that companies will make millions on that may have side effects or even have ulterior motives if you want to get, into the looking at what's done in the past and read it in the future. That's the kind of coolness and calmness we have to think about. We don't think about protecting ourselves from getting disease. You have to be almost negligent to get the disease. I mean, like the bubonic plague is popping up in San Francisco, I think it was, because of the homeless, dirty conditions. Well, there you go. When's the last person you had bubonic plague that had normal sanitation and access to health care? So the problem with this whole thing is the story. And goes back to this stuff in the internet. I'm getting so sick of this stuff. I don't even want to have guests anymore. I don't want to talk about this stuff because the time wasted and the actual problems that are being missed, the focus is on the disease and not on what they could do because of the disease, which is the real problem. Now, some might say that's the real point. Some have asserted that some of these vaccine scares, besides just making money for the vaccine companies, there's a goal in it in terms of how it might affect people's health. And, that's for another discussion, but there's, now a court case. There's now a court dedicated to vaccine lawsuits. So, something's going on. So, I listen to talk, I listen to things, and I'm getting it to the point where it's not I can't take it anymore, like I'm going to jump out a window. I can't take it anymore. It's a waste of time to go through the garbage, which can be proven questionable, at least, within seconds. I'm not going to have a show on it and have guests on it and say, what do you think this go? Oh, this could happen on it. That's what a lot of the radio shows have come into, YouTube videos. They're all clickbait by some crisis. We're going to have arrests. We're going to have vaccinations. Or we're going to have people put in camps, FEMA camps. We're going to have... One of my favorite examples is, remember when they had all the grave liners that were stacked up in Georgia, and they had pictures of it? Big Alex Jones show. Oh, my God, they're getting ready for the grave liners and all this. I happened to go through Georgia, and I believe I actually went by the place who had it, but I did some research on it, and they're the grave bottoms. They're not the tops. They're just the bottoms. So the grave liner that they're talking about, first off, would be worthless. Secondly, in Georgia, in areas around there, they have a very low water table. So if you bury somebody down in those areas there, they put those down in there. It's an ABS bottom when you put the body in it and you seal it so that the water doesn't seep into the coffin and rot the person. There's been people when they literally have pulled them out for reasons. The coffin is full of water because the coffins aren't waterproof. So you have somebody, and I'm kind of forgetting the details. As I looked it up, there was somebody who went out of business, and some guy bought all of these things and are sitting on it because they'll use them over the years. There's no tops to them, so you still have to go buy the top to use them. But it's going to be, oh, look, they're getting ready to bury a bunch of people. If they were going to bury a bunch of people, they would just burn them. All throughout history, they dug a ditch and threw them in or burned them. Do we need to look past Germany for that? The Nazis. So when you do some critical thinking of the situation, instead of just accepting it as given to you, you realize that assessment is it's problematic. Let's put it that way. It's problematic because there's other explanations for the information. All the information was, here are pictures of coffin liners stacked up. That's it. A lot of them. That's the sole information. Everything else was read into what it was. And when you actually look into possibilities of why it's there are other possibilities. Company that made it went out of business. Somebody else bought the stock. They're sitting on them. There's no top. So, you can't. And it would be ridiculous to bury that many people anyway. If you're going to have mass graves, you just throw people in the hole or you burn them, especially if you're doing it with malfeasance, malintent, or mass malfeasance, I guess. So this is what I'm saying when you think about this stuff. Now, I want to say I think of this stuff, and I look at it and go like, oh no, that's not the case. And then I am amazed at the amount of people who believe that it is for FEMA burying people once they have this. And this revolution started back with, was it Obama? Was it Bush? I think it goes back to Bush days. So now we went through several presidents, and but that threat is still going through it. And now that threat can be revived again and say, so when Antifa and when the left communist revolution happens, they'll have those coffin things. Before it was going to be Obama or Bush. You see how that comes through? And my problem is I see this stuff, and it's like, I know I'm not a genius. I have seen my own mistakes and frailties. I know I'm not a genius. So when I can figure something out, I think it's not that it's like, well, if I can figure it out, other people can figure it out. And, and I believe that, right? So when this stuff happens, and I say this, and people just go, no, that's their answer is no. No, I don't think that's true. I believe this. I don't care what you believe. What is the building of evidence that can be made to get to that point? Now, it's important because when somebody hauls you in for a crime, look at what happened with Trump and the impeachment. There doesn't need to be a crime anymore. It could just say people say this. And there's another reason. Well, he's bad. We need to get rid of him. Even if it's not true, it's still a means to get rid of him. Ends justify the means. You see how ridiculous that is and how dangerous that is? The same type of thought that made those coffin liners an arm of FEMA and doing bad things, that same line of thought is the same line of thinking, excuse me, that'll put you in prison. This is why we have to have this critical thinking, this analysis, traditional law gathering and evidence, why you have to sometimes, the guilty guy goes free because of loopholes. You can try and help the loopholes in the future, but it's important. I'd rather have the guilty guy here and there go free than the innocent guy not, and work on improving things. This is the point here that's so important, and it's evaporating before my eyes. Maybe it was never there. I remember listening to Art Bell back in the day, and, somebody would come on and make an assertion about some moon base or whatever, and it was kind of cool to think about it, and they could bring up the evidence, and it was kind of cool. Wait, this is not cool. We're talking about revolution. We're talking about people being imprisoned, killed, murdered, beat up. It's not cool anymore. It's not cool anymore to people who have just come up with stuff. And it's not cool to be salacious. But if you want to get clicks on your website, you got to pick a lane and stay in it. You have to pick a lane, stay in it, and you have to fertilize it, water it, and you have to bring up breaking news. Oh my God! Any day now, this is huge. Otherwise, nobody listens to you. And I can't deal with that. I cannot and will not deal with that. And what I will continue to do is, on this show, I'll continue to bring up points of view, explain why, show the logic and thinking behind it, show the evidence behind it, show the spiritual principles behind it, show the humanity that's being lost by looking at it differently. I mean, I'll bring up these points, and I'll share it, and that's fine. I'll just put it out there, and people can do what they would like. And until I no longer want to do that, that's what I'll be doing. When I bring up this way of looking at stuff, what I have found is people who have similar methods, because I didn't invent it. This is just simply kind of classical critical thinking. Evidently, you'll hit a wall where you'll get into a belief or a paradigm which will take precedence. Now, I've went using this when I started this out. It was from a collapse of my paradigm. In my church, divorcing, I was a fundamentalist type Baptist, and all my worldview collapsed because of seeking reality. And when I rebuilt it again, I said, I'm going to all seek reality. I started out with, is there even a God? I started out with, is the Bible real? Is there truth in the Bible? I started out from zero. I said, I'm not accepting anything anymore on face value. I'm not listening to anybody, no preacher, no teacher, no politician, no scientist. I'm not going to listen to anybody and take their word for it. I want to see it. I'm not brilliant, but I'm not stupid. And if you can put together a logical argument supporting it, I should be able to latch onto it to some degree and add to it in searching it. And this is back in the late 90s, so when I started doing this, this is what I've done. So when people say Planet X is coming, it's ridiculous. I'm not, it's not because I don't believe it. I actually started out not believing in Planet X, but I was open to it. I've had every person on this show into Planet X, from Nancy Leader to, I'm forgetting all their names now. The only one that made sense was James McKinney on his thing, and his theory is not Nibiru, but some body that, will come into the solar system at some point in time and has in the future or in the past. All the Nibiru people, it's a belief system. The flat earth, belief system. And people will believe it, they will support it, they will take evidence that supports it and throw out all of the evidence that doesn't, just to keep it going. People are pre-trib rapture Christians. They believe it. Now, I hope it's true, but I don't see the evidence for it in how I read the scriptures. That makes me a heretic to some people. Instead of saying that, obviously, I love God with all my heart, mind, and soul, and I accept Jesus Christ as my Savior, and I can have my own personal life show how that action has changed things in my life. I don't know how all of the details of how that all works in the physics of spirituality, but I can see the results, and I accept all of that. So it doesn't mean that I say you got to believe what I believe. I'll just tell you why, and I'll tell you the evidence, whether it's science, religion, philosophy. And one thing you got to understand, I don't make any money in this show, and people have been giving money in this show in a long time. I'm doing this out of my own, right? I got nothing to gain by what I'm saying. In fact, I don't gain by what I say. These other people who have these shows, they have to be salacious to get views, to get clicks, to get money. They're living at it. I mean, I'd like to be able to live to do this. But I realized a long time ago, either I'm not good enough, which is very possible, or what I'm trying to do is not going to be wanted by a lot of people in order to sell products or donations or subscriptions or what have you. And it's been proven out to me. I mean, I have people who are subscribed to Rents but not subscribed to me. I don't have a subscription, but you can still give. That's fine. My whole point of bringing this up was not that I'm trying to get people to give to me. My point is there's no motive. There's no motivation whatsoever for me to come up and do this other than the love of the truth. And I want to share what I have found, and I want to hear what others have found. And what I have found over these 17 years doing the show is that the vast majority of people don't want to know the truth. They want their position furthered. And I will absolutely not do that. I will go into obscurity. Well, I probably already am in obscurity. But one thing I will say is that when I say something, I have a backup for it. And I will admit when it's like, this is what I believe, here's my spiritual evidence and all that, which it doesn't translate from a personal experience to another person. And I accept that, and I understand it, and I don't expect anybody to take my word for it. In fact, you shouldn't take my word for it. You might want to listen. You might want to put it in your bozo computer, as I call it. You kind of let it ring around your head and see how it changes things, adds, subtracts, or what have you. And that's all I'm doing. Is I have an honest wanting to know truth, which I have now called reality. I want to know what is and why it is. And I've come up with a methodology on my own trial and error to be able to come up in the ballpark, at least with stuff. And that's what I'll be doing here. And so I'm going to go longer than I wanted to, but subscribe, the whole routine. You can subscribe to, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Spreaker. You can subscribe to it, comments, the whole 9 yards. I do have, if you want to help or spread the word, go to feettothefireradio.com. Look at how you can help. You can spread links and whatnot if you find it worthy. If you find the stuff helps you or whatever, you can do that. And feettothefireradio.com is now banned on, you can't use those links on Facebook. So I don't know what I said that was bannable, but, and that's going to happen, and that's fine. That's fine. And those people who really want to hear what I got to say, they'll find me, and those people who want to share what they got to say will find me as well. I set up a new website, a new email. All the other emails work, but it's feettothefireradio@protonmail.com. It's encrypted and whatnot. I pull it from them, so I don't use a third party to pull the email, which would uncrypt it. I don't know what would be that secret, but I'm just saying. You could let me know if you have people or something you want me to look into. I almost a large percentage of my guests all have been suggestions Some I found on my own, but a lot of suggestions. So I'm open to that. But I got to tell you, I'm getting really jaded by these people I've been talking about because it's. I don't mind someone promoting a book because in order to do the work to get the book, you got to be compensated for it. I got that. There's no problem with that, or a show for that matter. But when the show becomes the point of the profit, not the sharing of information, which is recompense for it, that's where you cross. It's like that mammon I mentioned before. You can't serve God and mammon. You can't serve fame, making money, advancing, getting market share. You can't serve that and serve God at the same time, because when God comes in, he cuts the bone from the marrow. He has, Jesus warns about, family member striving against family member, because truth is that kind of thing. You have to love truth and seek it, or don't bother, because truth is, reality and truth is a juggernaut. A reality is you walking in front of a train. The truth is the train. You're thinking, hey, I think I can make it across the track. That's not reality. The train is reality. When you make it across the track, it's reality. When the train hits you, that's reality. So when you're going to run across the track, you better make sure that you're in touch with reality to know what it can do. Because when reality hits you, it's like a bug against a meteor. Okay, so we've been given grace for many years. We've been allowed to screw up to a certain point, trying to, for demonstration purposes, to try and people to learn what happens when you do it. And some people kept on pushing on, so now the envelope is getting worse, and you're getting less grace, and more instant karma is coming. And that's why it's so important to not go off the deep end and use this common sense type of approach. So anyway, all right, let you go. I'm going to close. I'm going to try and close with a song from Ann McWilliams. I love this song. I'll only put the first couple verses. I do have copies of her CD. Ann McWilliams is available on Facebook if you want to talk with her. It's a great tune, kind of. It's a great couple of verses that kind of kick in the end of this show. So I will end with that. If you wanted to hang on and listen, I'll put that on the end of it. So, all righty. God bless, and we'll see you later.
My old friend, the one who walked before, the one who walked again, the ancient one of old, with wisdom for the new. Revive our inner sight, retell your timeless truths. Oh, ancient one. Hey!
Do, paid my dues, shook this dust from my shoes, right there beside. I couldn't be denied. To myself I have lied, and I wonder, yes I wonder, what is the truth? I can't refuse what I was put here to do. My heart is like a child. It's soft and it's mild. And again I must try. And I wonder So is it